Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to the brand new 2023 Safari Ltd Utahraptor. I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Safari Ltd for being incredibly cool and sending this over to me to check out here on the channel. Again, free of charge as an early review sample. Insanely kind of them. Definitely appreciate the opportunity to show off this beautiful new figure. And I also want to say before we go any further with the review as well, if you are interested in purchasing any Safari Ltd products, I also wanted to thank Safari Ltd for supplying me with a discount code for you guys to save yourself 15% off if you place an order on the Safari Ltd website. Make sure you use the code Andy at checkout and gain yourself a nice little discount there. Save yourself some money on picking up some of the amazing products that they have on their store. But as far as this Utahraptor goes, first of all, I can't even begin to express how excited I am that we have a Utahraptor model from Safari Ltd. The Utahraptor, for some reason, is like one of the most iconic raptors, but one of the most overlooked raptors when it comes to models. You would think at this point we would have tons and tons of Utahraptor models, but we really don't. We don't get many at all. I think Safari Ltd did a very good job on this one. Of course, you've got a really nice amount of plumage through the course of the model. Also, a really nice flashy looking paint scheme. Not something that in my head I would have come up with for a Utahraptor, and that's I think what I like most about it, because it's something that I wouldn't have expected. It kind of was unexpected for me to see such a really cool coloration with blues and whites and stuff throughout. Very cool looking color scheme for our Utahraptor. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at this brand new 2023 release right now. So, starting up here at the head sculpt of our Utahraptor, you can see that we've got some nice looking scale detail, nice looking skin texture there in the snout. Obviously, we have a skin textured look for the majority of the front of the snout, same deal with the lower jaw, before we transition to some nice feathering leading a little further back there into the head. The nostril is sculpted out. It's also highlighted with a darker tone. You can clearly see that the mouth is sculpted in an open position. You have quite a bit of teeth going on the inside of the mouth of your Utahraptor. They are all painted very nicely. For the most part, they look like they're pretty much all sculpted individually as well. We have a really nice light pinkish tone of color for the inside of the mouth. Very nice gloss coat added in there. You can see that tongue shining there as the light's hitting it, giving it that nice saliva-like look. And another thing that's really cool about this model is if you actually go back there, like the throat looks like a legitimate throat. Like it looks like it doesn't end right there. It really does have the appearance of continuing down through the course of the throat of our Utahraptor. It looks really neat, very realistic as far as that goes. The majority of the snout, as far as the skin texture goes, has a nice light yellowish tone. But as we lead a little further back here into the head, you start to see some feathers picking up. You can see that they are painted with a black, a little bit of white down here. As we run down through the course of the neck, you can see that we have a whitish tone leading from the lower jaw. The black leads in from the upper jaw, but does stripe down right here into the lower jaw briefly before kind of leading back up here and then disappearing as we lead into that bluish tone. If you get a nice close look though, you can see the feather detail actually looks really well done. The eyes are also sculpted out quite nicely, and they're painted beautifully with a yellow and a nice black pupil. You can see a nice gloss coat for the eyes as well. And what I really like about the fact that the eyes look like huge to me, like they look a bit larger than you would have expected, but that's due to the fact that our Utahraptor clearly is coming in for a kill of some kind, or maybe is even, in the middle of a confrontation with another Utahraptor. And since the mouth is obviously open, the arms are clearly ready to go, the claws are extended, and everything again shows that this Utahraptor is coming in for either a kill or some sort of a battle. You would expect the eyes to be kind of enlarged a little bit as it does so. And I like that. It obviously shows that the Utahraptor is a little bit enraged and kind of just shows emotion, because it's sometimes you'll see models like this and they'll have like a really cool like dynamic appearance, but there won't be any real emotion shown in the face. But that's not the case for this Utahraptor. I feel like you can genuinely see emotion here as far as that eye kind of being sculpted out in a larger way. It really is a cool touch on the part of Safari Ltd and the way they've sculpted this. As you lead down, you can again see that white coloration here leading along the side of the neck, leading down into into the throat. Again, we pick up here with the blues, and you can see the feather detail looks really nice. It's also quite vibrant, and I love the fact that the feathers actually stick up off of the model. Like, you don't just see like feathers sculpted in, you see feathers sculpted out. Like, they're actually leading up off of the model, giving it a really cool visual. But even more impressive than that, I think, is the fact that they actually had taken the time to sculpt out the fine detail of each and every feather. As you lead through, you can see all of the feathers actually have very fine details sculpted out in them. So really, really impressive sculpt work. I can't imagine how long it would have taken to sculpt this out to, again, highlight all of the feather detail. You can see that same thing as you move down the course of the arm, and you look at the feathers. Again, there is so much fine detail included in the actual feathers of the sculpt of this Utahraptor. It is super impressive. You also, again, have the bluish tone moving down through the course of the arm. Then you have some more black here leading out on the plumage extending off of the arm. And again, those feathers as well have that really highly detailed appearance to them. As you lead around here toward the front, you can see the hands, again, sculpted in an open position like they're ready to grasp whatever is in front of it. And the nails as well are sculpted really quite nicely. If my camera would focus on it, they're sculpted very nicely and painted very nicely with a black, which definitely is a nice touch as far as the coloration goes, leading off of the black of the wings here and then leading into the black of the claws. It looks pretty neat. As you lead back up here, again, you move a little bit further along through the course of the model. You can continue to see how the feathers kind of stick off of the sculpt. But as you lead back here into the thigh, they become a little bit more uniform. As you move down, you can see that they're not quite sticking up in such an erratic way. They're a little bit more calm moving down the course of the thigh down into the calf. And you can see like some bulging of the muscles and everything, even within the feathers themselves. As you lead a little bit further down, you can of course see that the feathers taper off before leading into the skin texture of the foot. We've got kind of like some scoots running down the toes. The claws of the feet, the sickle claws specifically, you can also see is up and extended and ready to go. Again, obviously showing that kind of attack-like look that we have for it. All of the nails, yet again, are painted with a nice black like we saw on the fingers. And then as you lead back up here toward the tail, you can see again more really nice looking fine detail to the feathers themselves. We also get a black beginning to pick up again as we lead out into the tail feathers of our Utahraptor. The black outlines the outer edge of the tail, and then we have the blue running down the center of the tail of the Utahraptor. And yet again, when we get really close, look at how crazy impressive the actual feather detail is moving through the tail of that Utahraptor. That is really nice, very fine detail. Again, must have taken forever to sculpt out all of those little itty-bitty pieces of the feathers, but it is really nice. Again, I love the coloration they've chosen for it. The bluish tones look super, super cool on this. The underside sports kind of like a light brown, and down here I really feel like you can see how impressive the feather detail is when it comes to all of the incredible fine detail of those feathers. That is just incredible looking as you move here along the course of the underside of the Utahraptor. Leading up, you can definitely see that we have that brownish tone for the entire underside before we lead back up into the chest, right where we, head from the chest into the throat. You can see it pick back up again in that white tone of color. The opposing side is going to look pretty much the same because honestly, the Utahraptor is kind of in like a neutral position, but looking at it actually in this visual, I almost feel like, now actually taking notice to the fact that it is kind of in that neutral position, I almost feel like it more so than is attacking is kind of putting on a display. I almost feel like maybe it's putting on some sort of maybe even a mating display, but I think maybe it's more of like a defensive display for maybe another Utahraptor in the area or something like that, because it looks like it's really kind of trying to stay steadfast and sturdy here to the ground, but obviously putting on quite the visual here in the front with the mouth open, the eyes really quite wide, again looking extremely angry. You have the arms out and the claws again extended. It really does have the visual of putting on some form of a defensive display towards something. I don't know exactly what. It would make a really cool diorama if there were another Utahraptor to include, again pretty much doing the same thing here back to this one. So maybe picking up two Utahraptors and displaying them together could create a really cool diorama. But you can see again the head and everything looks really good over here, just like we saw on the initial side. We have the eye again with that very large extended and open wide look like we saw on the initial side. Really beautiful feather detail throughout. So I can't even begin to express how psyched I am to actually have a Utahraptor model. We really, again, don't get many of them, and I'm beyond excited to actually have one from Safari Ltd, especially one that looks so cool. Now, the model does come with a plastic stand, of course, to help in transport to make sure that the legs don't warp or anything like that. But the Utahraptor doesn't need the stand to stand. You can see it is actually balancing perfectly on its own. The tail is not touching, even if it does look like it is. It's actually up off of the ground, so it does stand on its own. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the snout, you are looking at about 9 3/4 inches or around 25 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point would be the top of the head, right around 4 inches almost on the dot, or about 10 centimeters for a size comparison. When it comes to feathered Safari Ltd releases, one of the most iconic overall is the feathered Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is actually the second paint variant for the Dino Dana line. And you can see again, it definitely has a pretty good size to it next to that Rex. That's a very large Safari Ltd release. So pretty impressive that the Utahraptor has, such a good size, but it is a Utahraptor. You would expect it to have at least a pretty decent size. For another comparison, when it comes to some similar species from Safari Ltd, we have their drop-dead gorgeous Deinonychus here next to the Utahraptor. You can see a very similar look between the two, but obviously the Utahraptor is quite a bit larger. Similar in overall design, not similar in positioning or anything like that. The Deinonychus looks far more calm than our Utahraptor over here to the left. But for another comparison, here is the older Velociraptor from Safari Ltd as well, and you can definitely see yet again the Utahraptor is quite a bit larger, like you would expect it to be, than our Velociraptor. For another comparison, we've got another feathered friend here with the Anzu Wiley next to our Utahraptor. Obviously, the Utahraptor is much, much larger than the Anzu Wiley. But for another comparison, and this time really quite far off from everything we had just compared it with, we've got the older Safari Ltd Dimetrodon, because I know this is a classic figure that many people own, so it's one that I think would help to give you a pretty accurate idea of the size of the Utahraptor. We've also got the Baryonyx from a few years back that Safari Ltd had released. Again, for a size comparison, the Utahraptor actually wins this round as well. Not by much, but definitely a little bit larger than the Baryonyx. We've also got another classic Safari Ltd figure, as we have the Microraptor here fleeing from our Utahraptor, another feathered model from Safari Ltd. But for one final comparison, in what is definitely one of the most classic and loved feathered dinosaurs from Safari Ltd, we have our Utahraptor here with a bite being taken out of its tail from our Utahraptor here, and I really think that many people have the Utahraptor. It is a universally loved figure, one that many people, especially if you are a Safari Ltd collector, probably have in your collection. So another one that I felt like would be a great comparison piece for this Utahraptor. So this brand new 2023 Safari Ltd Utahraptor is such an awesome release. I can't even begin to express my excitement about it, because it's, again, a species we just do not get models of nearly at all. And we really don't get them as nice as this. And again, a fully feathered, just absolutely incredible looking Utahraptor is certainly a welcome addition to my collection. And I think Safari Ltd did a really good job on the model overall. The fine detail looks really good. The feather detail honestly looks incredible as you move through the entire course of the model. The feather detail jumps right off of the sculpt. Like, there's so much feather detail just kind of like extending up off of the sculpt. It's super, super impressive to see how they've sculpted it out in a way where the feathers kind of look a little erratic rather than looking, generic and lifeless. It looks really full of life as a whole, and I really like that aspect of the model, definitely adding in some nice doses of realism. And the pose is really nice as well. Again, maybe it's attacking, maybe it's just putting on some sort of a defensive display. I'm kind of leaning toward the latter, because I just feel like it really has that appearance, since the legs are not exactly, extended in any sort of like a running position. I feel like it's just kind of trying to warn off maybe another species of dinosaur, maybe a Utahraptor, who really knows, but it's got that look like it's sort of trying to fend something off, or at the very least just give it the warning it needs to know this Utahraptor isn't messing around and you don't want to approach it. So that's kind of my takeaway from the pose, and I think it looks really good. Again, adding in little bits of, just tiny bits of realism, like the eyes kind of bulging out a little bit, looking large, looking like the Utahraptor really is, again, doing its best to show off the fact that it will attack if you get any closer. The paint job is also really nicely done. The coloration they've chosen for it, again, was a little unexpected on my part. I just didn't expect a blue Utahraptor, but I'm super blown away by how nice it actually does look on the model overall. And looking at it here, I really could see a Utahraptor having these colors. It would look really neat in this coloration. It's all nice and naturally applied overall. There's no real sloppiness that I can see anywhere as far as the paintwork. All the nails are painted beautifully. The teeth are painted really nice and carefully. The eyes are painted really nice and carefully. They've added in elements of realism when it comes to like a gloss coat on the eyes and a gloss coat on the inside of the mouth and everything. So as a whole, this is another fantastic release from Safari Ltd for their 2023 year. They've already revealed a Majungasaurus that I'm just dying to get my hands on. We now have a Utahraptor, and who knows what else we're going to get this year, but I can tell you one thing, I'm definitely looking forward to finding out. So if you are interested in this should be coming into stock on the Safari Ltd website at some point in the very near future. When it does, make sure you use the code Andy at checkout to save yourself 15% off, or of course, you can save 15% off right now on any other items that you would like to use. Just make sure you use the code Andy again at checkout. One last huge thank you to Safari Ltd again for sending this over and allowing me the opportunity to add it to my collection, but also take an early look at it with you guys and show off this incredible brand new release. And also make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.